I wanted to have a conversation today, and I really would invite this to be a conversation. There's a few of us where that we can pull it off, I think, about purity. And, when you ask someone, how are you going to be pure? It's a sort of fraught question, right? When we deal with this in America today, if I were to say to my teens, tell me what is how is purity gonna play a role in your life? I think they would look at me very strangely, and then they'd be like, I don't know, do I need a ring or something? It's just not on there, right? And if I ask my friends who are Catholic or Christian, purity, they're like, oh my God, they'd cross themselves. It's a very tricky and convoluted concept, and it has to do with the idea, and I alluded to this in Torah study, that English is, I'm very close to you, and should I go behind the beam or should I scoot it back? That in English, purity and impurity are so inflected and connoted by these meanings from from Christianity, right? Purity from Latin puritas, and I don't know where it is before that, but like literally a state of not just of cleanliness and of cleanliness, and it's associated with, I guess, both a virtue, like a sort of metaphysical ideal and a physical ideal. Okay, so I'm curious, I want to just take a poll of the room. When I talk about purity in a Jewish context, what words do you associate with being pure? Or what does it mean to you? And maybe a couple words, a clause. Don't get to a sentence, but anyone care to share or talk about this? Pure of heart is an association you have. What does it mean, though? Morality. Okay. Innocence, and then with a bit of judgment on it, maybe ignorance, right? If someone is pure, they are ignorant. By the way, there's a really good, right, when we talk about Jacob, our ancestor, as Ish Tam, right? Like this blameless person, but also Tam can also mean one of the 4 children at Passover is Tam, is the simple one who doesn't know how to ask. So there really might be a link to it. What else? What does it say? Yes? Clarity, purity, and okay. What else comes to mind when we think of purity and impurity?
In the Jewish context, I think of sexism.
You think of sexism. Say more.
Because the rules are so focused on female purity, and there's so many things about
Around Nidah. Right.
that are to become pure and to stay pure.
So you think of the legalistic and onerous aspects that seem to fall disproportionately on women in modern, certainly for Orthodox context. So yeah, what else when we think of purity? Childlike. Children have purity. Colors, right? What we associate with it, right? Justice. I didn't think of that. Say more.
Well, to serve judiciously and to understand what people need and how to apply your feelings to solve issues or to relate positively to others.
Great. Does anyone? Oh, yes, please.
Tranquility of heart.
Tranquility of heart. Yeah, I like that one. That was well said. A sense of innocence, right? If you, can you be pure if you're not innocent?
I
Yes.
think
Wholeness where what is? Oh, intention and deed align. Ah, I love it. Any other thoughts?
It's a state that's static. It's hard to maintain. Like, I don't know, this past week I put on a new white blouse. Just washed it. And, within, half an hour, I had breakfast and I'd already swatched it.
Right. So there's a cleanliness. There's definitely a cleanliness aspect. By the way, I have a white bathrobe, and this morning, coffee. Now I no longer have a pure white bathrobe.
Use coffee in Mike's instance, too.
Great, coffee drinkers. So there's cleanliness is a word I think that we really may want to think about, because cleanliness can mean moral cleanliness, spiritual cleanliness, physical cleanliness. And we conflate them all. Like the mikveh is a body of water, which gives spiritual cleanliness, and yet we associate water with a cleansing aspect as well. Okay, sure, one more. Why not?
Just something came to me right this second.
Yes.
I'm thinking about being a channel and it not being clogged.
Purity is about...
Being a channel.
Right.
And I want it to be no junk in it.
That is a dangerous tangent, but you should look at Rav Kook's Orot HaKodesh, because that is basically his thesis.
Is it?
Yes.
I think of ivory soap, 99% pure.
You think, okay, we're going to go back to ivory soap. That's perfect. Did anyone associate goodness? Did anyone associate goodness with purity?
No.
Pure equals good, impure equals bad? No one has that. I mean, I think it's, whether we like it or not, I think it's there.
Other religious traditions definitely.
Good. So let's name that one. Anyone associate virginity with purity? That's certainly in the milieu, right? Where does that come from, by the way? Which men? Which men? It comes from, say again? Right. The Virgin Mary. Virgin Mary's gets played up, and that story is increased by medieval Christian sources. I mean, it's a theme throughout all church history, but it's really leaned into then. But actually, even before that, early church fathers have this tradition of asceticism, and that really becomes the linking of it. By the way, I'll note that virgin in the Greek sense means an unmarried woman. Not like modern Greek, but Koine Greek or whatever it's called. Yes?
There's just sort of a modern iteration of that, and I just was exposed to this just recently on some, post on social media, whatever. So Princess Diana was acceptable to the royal family, whereas Camilla was not, because she was a virgin, and while Charles was about to marry her. So even in that, that's not all that long ago. So
Right.
even that made her acceptable in that family and in that institution in a way that other women would never be accepted for that sole reason.
I think what we're hearing here, if I were to synthesize one thing, is that when we want to talk about purity, right, what we talk about so much in this week's Parsha, right, Tahora, right, like purity and impurity is what we translate it as, we bring in so much baggage. And one of the things my teacher, Dr. Eskenazi, has tried to drill into my head, and it took so much work, is to learn to read our Torah without bringing in our own baggage. And it gets terrifying when you start to say, oh my God, I've always thought it meant this. But in fact, it's not that. When we bring in our modern issues, our sexism, our whatever it is, just not intentionally, but from the culture we live in, to Torah. Purity in our biblical sense is like a bit more tricky. And it's, again, it has this sort of physical element, as we discussed in our conversation about leprosy and Torah study, but it also has it's a spiritual status that applies to all people. And I want to contrast a Jewish idea of purity or tahor versus a Christian one. In Christianity, it's about there's original sin, there's all of these concepts, whereas for Jews, purity is about your relationship to the community and about the ritual observance with divinity. And it's a rough heuristic, it's a rough dividing line, but at least let's say that when we are speaking about it, let's leave as much baggage outside as we can, and then we'll go there. And yes, there's still legalistic and issues like that. But I got really stuck on tahor and tameh. I didn't make it very far reading this week's Parashat before I put it down. I was like, oh gosh. Because my number one thought when I had it was, how do I speak to kids about this? How do you talk to a teenager about these ideas in Torah? How do we make Torah relevant to them? How do we find on-ramps to Torah, to a concept that frankly has been co-opted, rewritten, has so much weight, junk, sure, associated with it? How do you talk to a teenager about spiritual purity and impurity? So I asked around, and I was talking to some friends, and I did some reading about it. And one of the things that by the way, I asked Rabbi Nico about this. He had this really interesting thought about how we look at purity and impurity in the sense of how both life and death, right? The ultimate form of impurity comes from contact with or a corpse, right? There is no soul in that vessel anymore. Right, and the ultimate, and the states we move close to that. You mentioned nida, or a life that no longer has not reached potential. Some say, all purity is about navigating this life-death balance. Tricky, but it's hard. I struggled to on-ramp a teenager to it, so I decided that wouldn't be quite the way I do it. But I want to go back to soap. Or gold. I mean, I had gold in my head, but you mentioned ivory soap. What is pure gold or pure soap? How would you define pure soap?
No harmful ingredients in them.
No harmful ingredients.
Things that have passed
No blemishes.
through the whatever that.
Okay. So no impurities. A pure soap has no impurities. Let's go back to gold then. Gold is a little simpler. How do we think about what is pure gold?
Is this chemistry?
No. But if you wanted to, there's nothing else but gold in it.
I like the nothing else.
There's nothing else but gold. When I talk to a teen about, and I said this is from my own rabbi, I asked him about this. When I talk to a teen about purity, the on-ramp that I have found that I want to talk to them about is to say, when you're in a state of spiritual purity, it's pure you. There's no distractions. You haven't been hacked by your phone. You haven't been, you're not thinking about this. You're not hangry and angry. You're just pure you. That has been my on-ramp to talking with our teens about purity and impurity. And when we talk, I alluded to, Tazria-M'tzora is one of our hardest portions for a bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah or b'nai mitzvah students. But I think the idea of spiritual purity and impurity is actually crucial for our younger generations and maybe for our older generations as well. The idea that when we really want to get there, we take, and I'm not talking about nidar or the onerous rules, but I'm just talking about the idea that there are rituals, that there are physical actions, that there are processes we can take whether those are mikvah, whether those are isolation or like seclusion or focusing on ourselves. There are processes we can take to do our best to bring ourselves back to a pure state of being purely you. So with that, some food for thought, and I would love to read some Torah, shall we?